Oh, and that's a brilliant effort. And they've turned it right around. In the space of a few minutes, Saudi Arabia grabbed control of the game.
Greetings everyone and welcome back to the latest episode of Dawri, where we'll be looking at the latest talking points from the AFC Asian Cup in Qatar, of course, including Saudi Arabia's progress of the Saudi team to the round of 16 and an Iraqi triumph for the ages. We also take a quick look at the progress of the Arab nations in the African Cup of Nations, taking place, of course, in the Ivory Coast. With me, as always, is Arab News sports editor Ali Khaled. Ali, before we get on to it, I'm just going to say, the experts said last week, no one could look past Japan. More on that later. Listen, Ali, welcome again. Roberto Mancini's Green Falcons are through to the knockout stages.
Hi, Pete. Good to be back. Yes, we've been singing Japan's praises before the tournament, saying them and South Korea untouchable. Of course, we've been proven wrong. We'll touch on that later. But look, Saudi Arabia have not really made it easy on themselves. They're through to the round of 16, two wins in 2 matches. Sounds great. But, neither match was, exceptional, really. They opened their group campaign with a 2-1 win over Oman. But it so easily could have been a defeat or a draw. Saudi trailed until the 78th minute when Abdurrahman Gharib equalized, and then very, very deep into stoppage time, 96 minutes, I think, Ali Al-Balehi scored the winner. Just sparked some wild celebrations among the players. Quite right as well. It could have been quite a trying few days for them had they not won that match. We spoke last week, remember, Pete, about that press conference, Mancini's explosive press conference. Will it galvanize them? Will it leave a bit of negativity? They ended up winning, so that was good. On Sunday, a 2-1 win over Kyrgyzstan confirmed progress, though it remains to be seen if it will be as group winners. That depends on the last match. Again, Saudi did not sparkle, made hard work of beating, 9-man opponents, Pete, and the red cards came in the 9th and 52nd minutes. So really, did help Saudi out quite considerably, I would think. It's not like, 2 very late sendings off. So, Mohamed Kanu, the excellent Mohamed Kanu, scored after 35 minutes. Faisal Al-Ghamdi after 84. Job done. Qualification with maximum points. I think Mancini will be happy. But it's not exactly inspiring stuff. As we mentioned last week, so I'm saying, having said that, as we mentioned last week, champions often start slowly, ponderously, and improve as the tournament progresses. So no one should be too disheartened at the moment. You got to be happy with the 2 wins. And look, we can say all you want about performances not being inspiring. It still, certainly beats playing, your best football in the opening matches and fading on later. You'd rather have it the other way around and, and improve throughout the tournament.
Absolutely. Listen, don't forget that our very own Roberto Mancini's home nation of Italy, the masters of improving as tournaments go on. And having poor starts, and some famous Brazil teams as well, Ali. Let's not forget that. And I think you're quite right in what you say, that you'd rather galvanize as the tournament grows. You grow with the tournament. Great stuff. But listen, Ali, we've got to talk about the biggest shock of the Asian Cup so far: Iraq's incredible, and I use that word, incredible victory over Japan.
Oh, it's fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Look, we said last week, the results have been par the course. I think when we did the last pod, it was after the first round of matches, and with the exception of Group F. And there had been no surprises. And obviously Iraq, are by no means, a small team. But to beat Japan was absolutely brilliant. And it evoked the memory, the spirit of 2007, the miracle in Jakarta when Iraq beat Saudi Arabia in the final to win their one and only AFC Asian Cup title to date. They've now got their fans dreaming again. It's absolutely incredible stuff by the golf champions. Again, we did mention that they did win the Golf Cup. Yep, it was against some weakened teams elsewhere, but still, that actually it gives them that winning feeling. And maybe a few people, including ourselves, underestimated Iraq coming into this tournament. They took a 2-0 lead and really only conceded. It took a 2-0 lead in the first half, only conceded to Japan deep into stoppage time at the end of the match. So really a superb win, I think, for Iraq, and easily the biggest shock of the tournament and the result of the tournament. So 17 years on from the legendary win in Jakarta, the lion, the birth of the Lions of Mesopotamia. Could we have another miracle on our hands? We'll wait and see. Also, love to mention Palestine, who drew 1-1 with the UAE after losing the first game 4-1 to Iran. I mean, that was a tough defeat, but the 1-1 draw with the UAE, I think that's an excellent result against the Emirati, and they could go on now to qualify to the knockout stages with a win over Hong Kong. What a story that would be for Palestine.
I think as well, if you recall last week's podcast, Ali, you said you called it in these beginning stages. If you get off to if you get a good result, 4 points, and you're practically 1 foot in there. So what a story that would be, as you say. Oh, listen, before we bring our first guest in to talk about the last round of group matches, a quick word on the Arab teams at the Africa Cup of Nations. It's not what we would call going according to plan for Egypt, Tunisia, and Algeria.
No, it's not. Surprising. I mean, we expected quite a bit from Egypt. They needed, I think we already mentioned last week, they needed a very late penalty by Mohamed Salah to draw 2-2 with Mozambique in the first match. And then they drew their second match 2-2 again. And in this one, Salah got, hurt. He got a hamstring injury, had to be substituted, and now could miss the next couple of games. Not really going too well for Egypt. They've got 2 points from 2 matches, and they face a tough last group match against the leaders of their group, Cape Verde, on Tuesday. So things not going great there. I would still expect them, to qualify, but it's touch and go now. Algeria also have 2 points from 2 matches, and Tunisia just the 1 point from 2 matches. So all around, not been a great start. Only Morocco, one of the favorites for the Cup, of course, after their heroics at the World Cup in 2022. They've got 4 points and they've secured progress. But overall, a bit disappointed for the Arab teams in the Africa Cup of Nations. But we'll keep an eye on their progress and hopefully we'll have better news next week.
Absolutely. Okay, time to bring in a man who keeps a close eye on all football around the globe. It's the one and only John Duerden. Welcome back to the show, John. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Pete. How are you?
Very well, very well. Always great to have you back on. So much to catch up on. Going to put you into the very capable hands of our sports editor, AK. Take it away.
Hi, John. Good to have you back.
Cheers, Ali.
John, what do you make of the AFC Asian Cup? So we've had 2 rounds of matches now. So a lot of the qualification issues have been confirmed. What do you make of the standards so far, and what's caught your eye?
I think it's been an exciting tournament so far. The games, there's been lots of good games. The attendances are very, very healthy, and there's dramatic wins and shot wins as well. So I think some would argue maybe having 16 teams go through from the 24 can reduce the drama a little bit in the final day. But it is also nice that almost every team still has a chance to go through. And lots of teams have made it through already. If you win your first 2 games, like Saudi Arabia, you've got a game to spare. But most of the other teams have a chance. So the final round of games is going to be very interesting. And I don't think we'll see any major shocks in big teams not going through. But you might get, the likes of Palestine, have a real chance. You beat, on paper, the weakest team in your group, and then you should be in the round of 16, which would be fantastic. And I think that would be a great story. But I think the tournament started well. I think it's getting going. But of course, the knockout stage is when it really, goes up to the next level, and we should see, the usual excitement and drama and shocks.
John, you were keeping an eye on Saudi's match against Kazakhstan. In the second match, Saudi's second match. What did you make of it? I mean, they ended up playing against, 9 men. Not exactly inspiring stuff by Saudi, but at the end of the day, 2 wins out of 2. As we always say, you can only beat what's put in front of you. It has not been an exciting or sort of matches where they've dominated. But do you reckon Mancini will be happy with those 6 points?
Well, I think at the moment, he's in the second round, which if by the time he gets to the quarterfinals or semi-finals, nobody really remembers what happened in the group stage. It's just, getting out of it. And it's always the same old question, when do uncertain performances in the group stage, is that a sign of a team which has problems, or is it just a team that's finding its feet and as the tournament progresses? And so we'll get later on, we just don't know. But look at the likes of Japan, who have 3 points from the first 2 games. They'll be jealous of Saudi Arabia having the 6 points. And Mancini has the chance now to rest 3 players and play around a little bit in this final game. I think yesterday's game is tricky when you're playing against a team that already would be happy with the draw. Then they're down to 10 men and then 9 men. So your game plan goes out the window very quickly. I think there were some concerning issues about Dawri doesn't seem to be his usual self. I mean, there was a lack of energy, I thought, and urgency. I mean, he was a chance to win 4 or 5-0, really. And there didn't seem too much concern about scoring many goals. I think it could have been a great chance for the strikers to get on the score sheet. But it's always a difficult game. 10 men, 9 men, physical team. All you can do, and they just defend. I mean, all they're going to do is defend. And you're going to win as soon as you score. So it's a tricky game to kind of think too much about. But it's 6 points from 2 games, and what should happen now is Saudi Arabia win the group. Should beat Thailand, I think, in the final game. You've got 9 points, and then what you need to do, of course, is take it to the next level. At the next level,
John, you mentioned Salim Dawri not firing on all cylinders. I mean, that's obviously you'd want him to as the tournament goes forward. I mean, the fact that others have stepped in. Maybe goals have come from places that we didn't expect, and the fact that that some of the goals have come late, that's got to be a positive as well. I mean, we've mentioned the negative; it hasn't been, too inspiring. But I think the fact that others have stepped in and that others will score when Al Dawri is not scoring, that's got to be positive, and it's got to, Mancini's got to be happy with that. And how do you see that, and what other players have caught your eye from the Saudi team?
Well, yesterday, Kanu was excellent. He scored a good goal, of course. It's all-round play. I mean, I think, again, so you got playing against 9 men, you don't have to worry too much about your defensive duties. You can get forward. Abdurrahman Garib got a great goal, of course, in the first game, and I think he should have started yesterday, and he looked very lively when he came on. Al-Gamdi got a goal, a bit of a soft goal, but he was very interesting as well. And at the back, it's hard to say about yesterday because you're playing against 10 and 9 men. There weren't too many issues, and I think going forward, I think all it takes. I mean, like Mancini will point to, I think it's been mentioned before, in 1982, Italy, they draw the first 3 games in the group stage of the World Cup. Then quarter-final game against Brazil, they beat them, and then from there they were on fire. I think that's sometimes what you need is just one good game to really find your rhythm and find your performances, and then you don't look back from there. And now the Saudis are in a position where they can find that game, hopefully, and I think it's possible in the second round. I mean, they may find themselves playing against South Korea, another team that hasn't quite found their form yet. And that could be a good thing in some ways because beat South Koreans in the second round, and maybe then things will move on, and then belief will be there, and the team could start flying. But of course, the opposite could happen as well. But I think it's interesting. Mancini said very quickly yesterday that we're not favourites to win the title. We're not in the top 4, and but I think you'll be quietly happy with the results. But sure, there's a lot of improvements that need to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think, again, what applies to Saudi applies to South Korea and Japan as well, who are not having a great time. So we could say exactly the same thing, that they will improve as well. But I think overall, the fact that 2 teams that we thought really were invincible have not looked that, I think will also be quite encouraging for Saudi.
Yes. I mean, as Argentina lost their first game, as we all know, in the World Cup, very few teams win a tournament by playing well in every game. When Iraq beat Japan, and I think for Japan, it should be the wake-up call that they need, but also it's a reminder to everybody else that Japan have defensive issues. South Korea too, needed a last-minute own goal to get a point against Jordan, a game they thought they'd win quite comfortably. No team is going perfectly. Iran struggled to beat Hong Kong just 1-0. So all the big teams have issues of their own. But one of them, of course, is going to find their way through, and it could be Saudi Arabia. We'll have to wait and see. I think Al-Dawri needs to play well. I think if Al-Dawri is not playing well, I think it's very difficult for Saudi Arabia to kind of reach the levels that they need to be on. But so far, it's okay. And I think they've done what they need to do, which is just get out of the group stage. No major injuries, hopefully, and then take it from there.
John, you've already mentioned, obviously, and I mentioned earlier, Palestine, a great story. And of course, that incredible win by Iraq over Japan. Fantastic stuff, So you mentioned those two teams. Last week, Peter mentioned, after the first round of matches, Peter mentioned, quite a nice turn of phrase. The results for the Arab teams were par of the course. I mean, really, you could go through that first round, and it's kind of what we expected. Obviously, the Iraq result has changed this. As I would say, Palestine's draw against the UAE, I did not expect that. I thought the UAE would win that one, and Jordan's draw as well. And as you just mentioned, they came within seconds of beating South Korea. So I think those three are range in degrees of surprises. But what have you made of the other Arab teams or the Arab teams' performances in general? Well,
I mean, it helps they're playing in Qatar, but of course, Iraq, I think, as you mentioned, always had talented players, but the coach has been there for, quite a long time in relative terms in the region, about 15, 16 months. They were fantastic against Japan, and they showed how you have to play against them. And that could be, the result that takes Iraq to the next level. Overall, I think Jordan. I thought was very impressed with them against South Korea. I mean, they had a terrible build-up. The results were really awful. But then when the tournament starts, it's a measure of a good coach. He gets the team playing the way he wants, and the results are there. So I think overall, and Qatar can bounce back, of course, from the nightmare of 2022 and just made it look very easy. And now I think before the tournament, I think lots of issues, and they changed coaches, of course, just a few weeks ago. But they're looking like, they could be a very difficult team to beat on home soil. And I think at the moment, you have to say the Arab teams have looked better than the East Asian teams. But of course, there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, last question really, John. We've already touched on South Korea and Japan. We've been going on about them for weeks, saying that they're the two favorites. Would you say, and again, we've already mentioned that they will improve as well. Would you say that they remain, alongside Saudi Arabia, the three teams to beat?
I think Japan are still the team to beat. I mean, you would expect that the Iraq game would be a bit of a wake-up call for them. That's what I admit, but maybe they find it a bit difficult sometimes to play against teams when they're expected to win comfortably. I think maybe that could be Japan's weakness, but they have the attacking talent that nobody else has, I think, in the tournament. I think South Korea have the big stars, but don't quite know what they're doing under Klinsmann, I think, the coach. And people criticise Mancini a bit in Saudi Arabia, but it's more than that in South Korea with Klinsmann. But they've got 4 points from 2 games. And I think the three teams like Iran haven't really been tested yet, but there's some disquiet about the coach there as well. So every team has their issues. I think Japan are still the favourites. One result doesn't change that. You allow one poor performance and one bad result in a tournament, but you can't really have two. But I think it is more open than we thought it would be. And I think it was interesting that after Japan lost to Iraq, the Japan coach Mariasu said it's like an away game for us, playing in Qatar with all the local fans. And maybe that could be a bigger issue than we thought at the time, because the crowds have been good, enthusiastic and big, and supporting the Arab teams, and that can make a difference.
That's great. John, I feel like I've stepped on Peter's toes with that last question, because we know what Peter's going to ask now. Go ahead, Pete.
Well, yeah, not really, Ali. You've sort of teed it up at the back post nicely for me. Whether John can nod it in, I'm not sure, but the pressure's on. John, we're going to put you on the spot as always. Judging from, as always, an immaculate look at what we've seen so far, you've definitely seen enough to have a crack at who you think your top two favourites are.
Well, I know Japan. I think still the team to beat. after that, I don't know. I mean, Australia have been very quietly going about their business, so we haven't really talked about them. And I think they're going to be there and thereabouts as well. But really, I think Japan and Australia, but it could be anybody else. I mean, not anybody else, but I think Saudi Arabia have got a good chance. And I think it depends on the draw and how the team's feeling. But yeah, it is very open.
It is very open indeed. Ali, same question goes to you.
I'm going to stick to my. I did say at the start, maybe perhaps, wanting Saudi Arabia to do well. While obviously South Korea and Japan are the two best teams, I'm going to go for Japan and Saudi Arabia as my top two. I think. I think Mancini's experience in winning tournament football, international football tournament with Italy, will come in handy when the pressure is on. John already mentioned, 6 points out of 6. He'll be the envy of other coaches. He can change, a few things for the last match. I think things will start to improve for Saudi Arabia. I mean, again, we have to remind ourselves, like, the maximum points, which I've been talking as if like they've had a bad start. Hardly, it's just only the performances have raised a few questions. But 6 points out of 6 going forward, I think they will continue to improve. John's spot on about Japan. I think everyone's allowed to have a bad result. Yep. Japan will absolutely go on to improve. I mean, I think we can expect that. So I want to stick to those two teams. Australia, South Korea, very good. Iraq, dark horse, and we haven't really mentioned Qatar as well. Who knows what they're capable? But I'll stick to Japan and Saudi Arabia.
Good, you're only allowed to, same as John. Listen, Green Falcons fans will be pleased to know I haven't changed mine. Saudi Arabia is still my tip for the tournament, and they will be until it can't be. So Green Falcons fans, have no fear, I'm right behind you. Massive thanks go to our special guest today, as always, John. Thank you so much for joining us. My pleasure. That's it for another episode. It's great to see you, and such a fascinating insight. That's it for another episode of Dawri, another AFC Asian Cup flavoured episode of Dawri, and we'll see you next time, when we will be looking ahead to the serious business of the knockout stages.